Have you ever wondered what it means to regulate or heal your nervous system? Hi, guys. I'm Alex. I'm your nurse, and today we're talking about the nervous system, what it is, and how we regulate it. There's been a lot of talk lately that I've noticed about regulating your nervous system or let your nervous system metabolize, and it often sounds really abstract. These are often presented as a quick fix, implying that you can easily manage stress or dysregulation. But this oversimplification ignores the nuances of how the nervous system actually works. It's a complex, dynamic system that is constantly responding to internal and external stimuli, and it can't just be turned off or on or healed in a short amount of time. But underneath those phrases is a very real biological system that is constantly monitoring your environment, your body, processing information, and adjusting to the physiology to keep you alive and safe. The important thing to understand is this: your nervous system is not just reacting and adjusting to the world around you, it is interpreting it. Those interpretations shape how your body responds moment to moment. So, in this episode, we're going to break down the anatomy of the nervous system, how it regulates the body, what happens during stress, and what people actually mean when they talk about healing or regulating your nervous system. Because hopefully, once we start to understand the physiology, many of these concepts start to make more sense. So, digging into the anatomy first. The brain and the nervous system are incredibly complex with many interconnected pathways. The nervous system is broadly divided into two major parts: central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So the CNS includes the brain and the spinal cord, and this is the main processing center where information is interpreted and decisions are made. And then the peripheral nervous system includes all the nerves that extend out from the brain and the spinal cord into the rest of the body. And these nerves carry two types of information: sensory information traveling to the brain, and then motor signals traveling from the brain to the muscles and the organs. So within peripheral nervous system, there's two important divisions, and you're going to notice this. Things break down into multiple different systems in the nervous system. So we have the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system controls voluntary movement like walking or lifting your arms. Autonomic nervous system controls the functions that we don't consciously think about, so digestion, pupil dilation, breathing patterns. The autonomic nervous system is especially important when we talk about stress and nervous system regulation. The system operates continuously in the background and adjusts your physiology based on what your brain perceives is happening in the environment, and that could be physically in your body or externally outside of it. So, physiology for your nervous system. At the cellular level, the nervous system works through specialized cells called neurons. Neurons communicate using electrical signals and chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. And these signals travel incredibly quickly through networks of nerves, allowing the body to respond to changes in the environment in fractions of a second. So, for example, you touch something hot, and sensory nerves send a signal to the spinal cord and the brain, and then the response is generated almost instantly to move your hand away. Many nervous systems respond more subtly, though. The brain is constantly receiving sensory input from vision, sound, touch, hormone levels, internal organ systems, and then emotional processing as well. And all of this information is integrated to determine one key question: is the environment safe, uncertain, or threatening? And based on that interpretation, the nervous system adjusts the body's physiology accordingly. And this is where the autonomic nervous system becomes particularly important. So, the autonomic nervous system has two primary branches as well: the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So, the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight response, and when this is activated, it prepares the body for action, and these changes allow the body to respond quickly to perceived danger. So, this could result in heart rate increases, breathing patterns become faster, digestion slows down because it's not as necessary, and blood flow will shift towards the muscles for that movement. Parasympathetic nervous system, this is the rest or digest, and so this is where we promote recovery or restoration. And the body begins repairing tissues and conserving energy when the parasympathetic nervous system is activated. So your heart rate can slow down, digestion will resume, things like that. Healthy nervous system function involves movement between these two states depending on what the environment is requiring. The problem occurs when the nervous system becomes chronically or overly activated in stress. So, when the brain perceives a threat, whether physical or physiological, it activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is often called the HPA axis, and this leads to the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. In the short term, this response is extremely adaptive. It allows the body to mobilize energy, sharpens your attention, and therefore respond to danger. When stress becomes chronic, though, the system can remain activated for longer periods than it was designed for, and that is when problems occur. So, over time, this can influence your sleep, digestion, immune function, mood, and your energy regulation. And this is where the conversation about nervous system regulation often begins. It's because these symptoms show up that people start to pay attention and wonder what is going wrong. So, emotion and nervous system regulation. Emotions are not just psychological experiences, they are also physiological states. Different emotional experiences activate differently in the body. They might affect your heart rate or your breathing patterns. They can affect neural signaling in the brain and even your hormone levels. So, for example, fear tends to activate the sympathetic nervous system. So, when you feel fear, the body's going to activate more in order to get you away from that stimulus. But then conversely, feelings of safety and connection are associated with an increased parasympathetic response. So when you're out with your friends and you're feeling very happy or joy, then you're going to feel much more relaxed, much more in your body, as they would say. And that parasympathetic response is going to be more prominent. So, because of this, emotional experiences can often influence the nervous system, and the nervous system can influence emotional experiences. So, this is why emotional processing, stress management, and physical regulation strategies are often interconnected. The body and the brain don't operate separately, they are part of the same regulatory system and feedback cycle. So, what do we mean when we say healing the nervous system? When people talk about healing or regulating the nervous system, they are usually referring to improving the body's ability to shift out of chronic stress activation and return to physiological and psychological balance. In practical terms, this involves supporting the systems that influence the nervous system signaling. So, things like sleep quality, your nutrition, physical activity, breathing patterns, and emotional processing. None of these interventions directly control the nervous system in isolation. They influence the broader physiological environment that the nervous system is responding to and helps it to respond and then therefore regulate over time. So, consistent regulation signals can then help the system to become more resilient. What does regulation actually feel like, though? A lot of people will get this confused that regulation means that you're not feeling anything or that you're in a perfectly regulated state means that you never get dysregulated. That's not how this works. Regulation doesn't mean unbothered. That could actually signal other problems if serious or complex situations are not affecting somebody. Emotional regulation means being resilient or adaptive to stress in a healthy response. You begin to notice when you're activated, and then you have coping tools in order to return back to balance. So, regulation can be tricky because it doesn't actually feel regulated. Many people will equate regulation with relaxation, but the nervous system isn't always meant to be calm. Just like we don't want to be stuck in a hyper aroused state like the sympathetic nervous system with being super scared or angry, we also don't want to constantly be activated in the parasympathetic state where we're super relaxed. Different situations require different response. I think the trick here is that with our nervous system, it's often difficult to really fully grasp the concept because it's not in a physical presentation. So we can't see it like we see a broken arm and say, oh, your nervous system is dysregulated. Like, it can be a little bit more abstract than that. So, what regulation often feels like, it can look like crying. This is the body's way of releasing stored emotion and stress hormones. It's perfectly natural and it is okay to do it. Again, we want a balance because it's going to exist on a spectrum just like everything. We don't want too much and we don't want too little, but that doesn't mean that crying is bad. If you're doing it, it just means that the body is releasing and responding to stimulus. Trembling, yawning, or shaking, these are natural ways the body resets after stress. It is physically releasing and expending that energy to get out of your body so that it can regulate itself and downregulate. Feeling angry, sad, or restless, kind of the same idea here. Emotions activate different parts of the nervous system. Expressing them shows that they are moving through. Wanting stillness, quiet, or rest, your system is seeking recovery. It means that it's done what it needs to expend, but now it wants to go find a safe space so that it can go and sit in that parasympathetic response. And then experiencing less reactivity to old triggers, ideally, is the end goal here. Your window of tolerance is expanding. It means that it's processed that previous stimulus and now it knows how to adapt to that in the future. So it's not regression, it's repair that we're looking for here. You're not losing control, you're finally safe enough to feel and process the experience. So, from a nursing perspective, supporting nervous system regulation. Nervous system health tends to be supported through simple foundational behaviors rather than complex measures. So, we're going to talk about some of the basics, but then we are going to talk about some of these regulating tools and techniques that we can get into that can help that can help us to ideally adapt over time. So, starting with sleep. Adequate sleep allows the brain to regulate neurotransmitters and stress hormones. The recommended amount per night is 7 to 8 hours for men and then 9 to 10 hours for women. And this is because of the different hormone production. The focus is not just on the amount of sleep, but the quality. We ideally want uninterrupted sleep with appropriate cycles through each REM cycle. And the trouble is that sleep and stress or emotions can get into a negative feedback loop where a lack of sleep creates more stress and then increased stress creates lack of sleep or worse sleep. This is where good sleep hygiene comes in. Set a consistent bedtime and wake time. Avoid eating within an hour before bed so that digestion does not cause more wakeful state in your body. Turn off screens at least an hour before bed. Avoid napping too late in the day because that can throw off your body's natural circadian rhythm. And then keep your room cool and dark, ideally around 68 degrees if possible. I know that's kind of cold, but this helps your body to thermoregulate so that it can go into that more relaxed state. Over time, ideally, a predictable routine will help to signal to your body that it's time for it to turn off your brain and rest. So, regular physical activity, moving into another recommendation here. Regular physical activity helps regulate sympathetic and parasympathetic balance. When you're stressed, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol. Movement helps to release those stress hormones and regulate them and restore balance. Gentle exercise works best for a dysregulated nervous system, so if you're not used to intense exercise, that's okay. Walking, stretching, yoga, dancing, these are all good examples that can help to regulate your body's stress response. The key is consistency. So pick an activity you enjoy enough to stick with because the best exercise to do is the one you will do. We also want to support healthy nutrition in our body. Consistent nutritional support stabilizes blood glucose levels, which influence energy regulation and stress hormone, particularly cortisol. Your nervous system depends on steady energy and balanced nutrition to function properly. Skipping meals or relying on caffeine and sugar to get ourselves through our stress can make nervous system dysregulation worse because it doesn't have adequate enough calories in order for the body to use. And this is not to say that we want to overeat, but we do want to focus on vitamins and nutrients in each meal in order to support our bodies and therefore our nervous systems to work through the activation that we're processing. Aim for balanced meals with protein, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates. Foods rich in magnesium can also help, and omega-3s as well, because they support brain health long term. So, talking about some different nervous system regulation techniques that we can use. Breath work is a big one. This has started to gain a lot of traction lately. Breathing is one of the few physiological processes that is both automatic and voluntary, aligning it uniquely at the crossroads of the mind and the body. Breathing patterns can affect the nervous system through their influence on the vagus nerve and heart rate variability, or HRV. So the vagus nerve is one of the longest nerves in the autonomic nervous system, and it travels from the brainstem through the neck and the chest and the abdomen. It is the main component of the parasympathetic nervous system, so rest and digest, and it's responsible for regulating involuntary functions like heart rate, digestion, breathing, and immune response. So deep, slow breathing can help to alter your heart rate and your cortisol levels because it helps to signal to your brain that you're safe. So it shifts the autonomic nervous system from the fight or flight response to the rest and digest state. A simple technique that we can follow here: inhale slowly through your nose for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, and then pause for 2 counts before repeating that process. So let's talk about why this technique is particularly helpful. Nasal inhalation results in greater nitric oxide delivery, which positively affects vasodilation, oxygen uptake, inflammation, and autonomic regulation. Contrastingly, though, mouth breathing results in shallow thoracic and sympathetic dominance, which in turn can actually exacerbate the stress response. Post-exhalation holds may enhance relaxation and further reduce sympathetic drive. This increases end-tidal carbon dioxide, so CO2, a mild controlled physiological signal that activates central chemoreceptors. This causes parasympathetic response and supports chemoreflex setting, so it favors slower breathing and vagal balance, essentially. This results in a more stable autonomic state and therefore enhanced awareness. Research has been showing increased delta, theta, alpha, and beta waves in the brain during slow breathing when compared to fast breathing. So this suggests a uniquely induced, globally integrative dual brain state that is both calm yet awake. Moreover, it implies decreased overactivation, such as stress, and then calm focus, relaxation, and enhanced parasympathetic tone. Slow breathing enhances top-down emotional regulation by improving the amygdala, which is the fear reactivity center, and medial prefrontal cortex connectivity, which is the regulatory center in the brain. So essentially, slow breathing, regulated breath work, this helps to improve our reactivity and our regulatory centers in the brain. If you're not sure how to get started, there are many apps that you can use that can guide you through meditation and breathwork sessions. You can get on YouTube, there's lots there. I recently just started going to a studio, and I've been going for about 8 weeks now, I think, and it has been amazing. I did not know that this was such a beneficial practice, and it's been really interesting to see how I have personally regulated as I've been going through my own life and triggers and responses and everything. But I'm only showing up once a week right now. They have classes 4 times a week, but a lot of people will do this daily. And the idea is essentially just like you show up to the gym and you flex your muscles, you want to show up to the nervous system gym and help regulate your nervous system. So ideally over time, the more that we practice these techniques, the more that they can influence us, our emotional state, but they are physiologically working on the body so that our body can then respond and regulate more efficiently. So if breathwork doesn't work for you, we can move into some meditation and grounding techniques. And these help you stay present in the moment when anxiety or overwhelm hits. One easy way is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. So you name 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 that you can taste. This simple exercise brings your attention out of your head and then back into your body and allows you to ground and then reset your nervous system. Keep in mind for any of this, different people respond to different regulation techniques in different ways. Nothing works for just every person. What works for one might not work for another. For instance, meditation may help one person feel calm, but it could trigger anxiety in somebody else, especially those with trauma histories. The nervous system's reaction are deeply personal and also very context specific. So if you try one of these things and they don't work for you, that's okay. There's many other techniques that you can try to help regulate. Ultimately, see a practitioner if your symptoms are persistent or interfere with your daily life. It's worth talking to a provider. This could be a therapist or a PCP or even a neurologist. They can help to identify underlying causes and create a personalized plan for your healing. In some cases, medical issues like thyroid disorders or chronic infections or hormonal imbalances could be contributing to nervous system dysregulation, so it's important to see a doctor to rule out those causes. Healing a dysregulated nervous system does take time and patience, and that's okay. By slowing down, having compassion for ourselves, creating safety, and supporting our body's natural processes, hopefully we can begin to feel more grounded and foster better nervous system regulation and healing. And these strategies are not quick fixes. They help create conditions over time where the nervous system can function and recover more effectively. Consistent practice with any of these creates a toolkit for us to utilize so that we can ideally foster more resiliency in our nervous system for situations in the future. The goal isn't to eliminate stress, but to learn how to manage it effectively and recover from it more quickly after periods of heightened nervous system arousal. So, my key takeaways for you. The nervous system is the body's primary communication and regulation network. It constantly interprets environmental information and adjusts physiology to maintain survival and balance. The autonomic nervous system shifts between stress activation and recovery states depending on what the brain perceives. Emotions are not separate from physiology, they are a part of the same regulatory process. And supporting nervous system health often involves strengthening the basic systems that influence stress regulation and recovery. So, your nervous system is not something that needs to be controlled or forced into a specific state. It is a dynamic system that responds to the signals in your body and in your environment. Understanding how it works can make many of the conversations around stress, emotion, and regulation much clearer. And it reminds us that many aspects of nervous system health come back to the same foundations that support overall physiology. If this episode helped you understand more about your body and your nervous system and how to regulate it, consider subscribing and share it with someone else who could benefit. Please send any questions you have my way. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Health Recoded Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys next week.